Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome in this new country deep dive where Sue Branston, UK country head, and Madeline Webster, global consulting manager at Fleet Logistics, will present all you have to know about the United Kingdom. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, this is Fleet Logistics. Today we are going to shine a spotlight on the UK market. After a quick intro to us, your speakers, we will give a UK market update, the taxation and grant data available to help with decisions on your electric vehicle adoption, discuss why 2021 we believe is the tipping point for electric vehicles, and our top tips on both the acquisition of electric vehicles and what should be your next steps on the electric vehicle and mobility journey. I'm Sue Branston, Country Head for UK and Ireland, part of the Fleet Logistics Group. Fleet Logistics is present in 27 plus countries. We have collectively over 25 years of experience and reader recommendation in our local UK market. Over 350 employees worldwide, over 170 clients, and 180,000 objects under some form of management.
And I'm Madeline Webster. I'm Global Consulting Manager for Global Mobility Solutions at Fleet Logistics. And we're the area of the business that looks after consulting, mobile analytics and reporting, and also publications on mobility insight and what's happening in the market.
Thank you, Madeline. Now I'm going to look at the UK market overview specifically. The true influence of the pandemic on the UK economy and fleet sector is yet to be seen, and we will understand more when the financial support from the government is withdrawn. The head of the Bank of England hopes for a strong bounce back later this year to pre-COVID levels as the vaccine rollout increases confidence. However, most fleet operators have also had to change working practices, and many of these changes will be long-term, we believe. Home working and reduced mileages in some ways creates opportunities for fleets to adjust their fleet makeup, look at new technology available, and review their policies. As a result, leasing companies have seen a record level of contract amendments to mileage and term and overall vehicle extensions, providing flexibility for fleets at an uncertain time. The question is, however, how many and what to replace these older vehicles with? The UK has clean air zones coming into force in some major cities this year, adding just under £10 per day to an operator's cost for entering these zones. Rules will differ between cities, and this needs to be considered in the total cost of ownership for vehicles that will not be meeting the criteria. If possible going forward, a holistic approach to costs should be taken by businesses. This gives real costs of ownership, especially at a time when arguably budgets will be under significant pressure as businesses look to make savings. In 2021, we will also hear how the government will roll out its roadmap for the phasing out of ICE vehicles by 2030. We will also know how it will determine how we actually arrive there on time, and the legislation needed to define what, for example, a hybrid vehicle is really defined as. Something I'm sure all OEMs will be keen to know for planning their strategy.
Thanks, Sue. I'll now go through the taxation and grants available for low emissions vehicles in the UK and the changes we've seen this year. So earlier in April, we saw grants for low emission vehicles reduced down to £2,500 from £3,000. The criteria also for purchase price was also brought down from 50,000 to 35,000. And the CO2 emissions of less than 50 need to be applicable, and the vehicle must be able to travel 70 miles with zero emissions. A fuel list of the qualifying vehicles can be found at the link that's stated on the slide. Now, this change has also affected LCVs as well. So vans can have grants for less than of up to 3,000 or 6,000, depending on the purchase price. And there's different criteria again, which can be checked on that link. Tonnage and purchase price play a factor in that, so make sure that you review that when picking your vehicles for your fleet. So we have seen the grant reduce now from 5,000 when it initially started, and they've gradually reduced down since 2018. And the government say this is because of the number of more moderately priced EVs and low emission vehicles are now available in the UK. There's been about a 50% increase since 2019 alone, and there's more coming into the market all the time. So that's the grants for the actual vehicles themselves. We also have grants available in the UK for infrastructure too. So firstly, there's the Office of Low Emission Vehicles offering up to £350 towards a home charging point for qualifying vehicles. Now that needs to be fitted by one of the government's approved suppliers, which again, I refer you back to that link to find a list of. The great thing is that from your driver's perspective, the person fitting this, the company fitting the charging point at their home, will claim back the £350 for them. There is a bit of paperwork for businesses to complete. However, all your driver needs to pay is the difference between the £350 and the actual cost of fitting the vehicle.
Thank you,
There's
Madeline.
also
Just on that point alone, I just wanted to re-emphasise that the government, just like the grants that you mentioned earlier were withdrawn with no notice, the £350 contribution towards the installation of a charge point could also be withdrawn by the government at any time without notice.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, and one thing that I didn't add that I'd like to is also that these grants for purchasing vehicles and for the infrastructure, it applies whether you purchase them or finance them in any ways. So, you know, if you're contract hiring or whatever, the grant is still applicable and will bring down the cost of the vehicle for you. And you'll see that in your rentals if you're leasing. Okay, so back to the grants that's available. There's also the workplace charging scheme. So that offers grants up to £350 per charging socket to businesses, and that can be charities, public sector businesses, and it can be over multiple sites as well, up to a maximum of 40 sockets, which will really help with adoption and giving your drivers space to actually charge the vehicle if they're coming into the office environment and for visitors as well. You do need to have off-road parking, and that goes for the home charging grant as well. So make sure that you do check the criteria and make sure that you're taking advantage of these grants while, as Sue says, they're still available. Benefit in kind is also focused on low emission vehicles in the UK, and we currently know what the benefit in kind levels are up to 2024-25. That gives you a little bit of certainty, at least when selecting a vehicle at the moment. So the taxable amount of a car benefit is calculated on a percentage, which is calculated using the CO2 emissions of the vehicles, the P11D, and the range is now also a factor. As you'll see on the table on the right there, the sweet spot really to minimise your CO2 is, well, to minimise your benefit in kind, I should say, is 0 to 50 with a range of 130 miles and above, and you'll pay 1% benefit in kind this tax year, and that rises to 2% for the following years up to when we know it gradually increases as the range decreases. As you can see there, there's a lot of vehicles now on the market which fit into the criteria. Okay. Back to you, Sue.
Thank you, Madeline. Now we're going to talk about the UK market tipping point for electric vehicles. As you'll see there, the BVRLA, which is the body representing the rental and leasing associations, predicts electric vehicle sales to be averaging at a 100% increase for 2021. However, the PHEVs, the plug-in electric vehicles, are expected to slow down to 22%. This emphasises the point that Madeline made earlier about the reduction in the grants being made available now because too much adoption has now taken place. However, consistently, we are still hearing from some of our customers a perceived barrier to electric vehicle adoption, which is quite a conundrum. However, while the tax incentives and grants are available, the recommendation is now is the time to review usage. There are now more than 30,000 charge points across the UK in over 13,000 locations. That's more public places to charge an electric vehicle than petrol stations to fuel a vehicle. with over 7,000 charge point connectors added in 2020 alone, and that is growing all the time. Yes, you need to consider driver journeys, the personal use, access to the infrastructure, etc. However, we are now able to factor this into the fleet operators, and your fleet management company or leasing company will be able to assist you with this point.
Thanks, Sue. And I think it's a really good time for businesses to review, as we've pointed out with the grants, while the tax incentives are there, there's low national insurance to pay in fuel savings and no lease rental restriction, of course, because of the CO2 limit to take these advantages. So yeah, great time to be looking at this in the UK. So now I'll talk you through how to procure and how to select your low emissions vehicles or full EVs. So selecting the correct vehicles for your fleet is paramount to the success in any change programme, and it may be that you're starting with a pilot programme. Firstly, many OEMs will very much be happy to help with demos for trials, and that can be extended ones as well, and that will allow your drivers to get real life usage experience and see how it actually fits in for your company, because it is really important to note that every business will be at a different stage with this. And there's not a right or wrong, really. It needs to be considered for the business specifically. So it may be necessary to consider other OEMs, or at the very least to consider the product range and upcoming product range for the OEMs that you're using. Depending on your fleet size, you may want to do a full RFP or even a benchmarking exercise to check the discounts that you're receiving and the bonuses. And don't forget, if you're an international fleet, look for areas where you can harmonise this between countries and leverage larger discounts by scaling your volume. It's then time to have a look at your leasing companies as well. And again, a benchmarking or RFP, RFQ can be done, and look at the different solutions that are out there versus single and dual supply, and how you want to fund the vehicles will be the next step as well. So looking at acquisition costs, we've seen a lot in the last 12 months, I would say. People looking at their legacy fleet and looking at sale and leasebacks, for example, to gain some cash into the business. So it's a great time to look at that if you're a purchase fleet as well, just generally. However, looking at the acquisition methods for your EVs and low emissions vehicles should be done too once you've selected them. So there's always contract hire, you purchase, or salary sacrifice. And I'm sure everybody's read in the fleet press about the rise of salary sacrifice for EVs. We don't have the time to go into the maths behind that today, but there is a reason for that. But again, I have to caveat this by saying that every business will have to select the appropriate type of finance for them and their particular set of circumstances. So speak to your leasing companies or your fleet management companies, as they can help you with that, and do some discounted cash flows, for example, to help you select the correct acquisition method. It's really important then to look at total cost of ownership, and Sue referred at the start to looking at costs holistically. If you're not doing this already and just looking at your rental, I would very strongly suggest that you start to adopt total cost of ownership or total cost of mobility. Then it's the only way you will really see what the EVs look like against the normal or petrol or diesel engines, I should say. And track your results then against what your costs have been in the past. This will also help you identify the areas where spend can be cut in your supply chain to help minimise your total cost of ownership. So as I said there, once you have got your baseline costs, the next stage is really to look at the optimum combination of suppliers for your fleet in the UK. And again, that might be leveraged with other markets. So look at your leasing company structure, and then, for example, in the UK being such an unbundled market, and what we mean by that is a lot of services are not built into leasing costs, for example. So is your fuel provider still the best one for you? EVs, fuel savings go hand in hand with that because of the electricity compared to the fuel cost. However, your drivers may require an additional fuel card for infrastructure charging. And then there's all the other areas of risk, driver training that can come into a total cost of ownership model. Yes, once you've done that, Pick all your service partners and ensure that your business is receiving not only the most cost effective, but also the best services that are available in the market. There's new players popping up all the time offering great developments in technology.
Thank you, Madeline. So the shift of electric vehicle and mobility, which will be the next stage in, we believe, everyone's fleet evolution. So you need to start, we believe, with a business case, as Madeline has just described. But this is not going to happen overnight. You will need to engage all the relevant stakeholders within your business, because no one area now has overall responsibility. It could be HR, it can be procurement, finance, etc. All need to have their say with regard to looking at the business case. Depending on where you operate also is important. The demographic of your fleet is important. This may actually be more pressing than you really think. Generally, employees now are not so keen to own. They want flexibility. They want to, and businesses want to retain talent. So this needs to be considered overall. Technology is often more of a priority than the brand name or the specification of the vehicle, and consumers are much more conscious about the environmental impact these days. The speed of adoption and resource to look at this will, of course, be individual to your business. No user case is identical, sadly. However, we hope that today we have given you some food for thought and some ideas that may be of interest to you.
Thanks, Sue. So just to conclude what we've spoken about today and how to tackle the mobility journey, the first stage is the case for change, and that's engaging your internal stakeholders. And it may not be the traditional stakeholders that have looked after fleet. If you're putting in charging points, for example, you need to think about perhaps involving facilities, operations, because driver dwell time while they're charging needs to be factored into a day. So engage all of your stakeholders, and regardless of what your motivation is, I mean, my favourite topic is sustainability at the moment, so I hope it's trying to help with CO2 reduction and nitrous oxide reduction, of course, because we all know of the detrimental health impact that results because of these gases. And then develop your business case, and that will then allow you to develop scenarios to create your roadmap for the UK fleet. So preparation, really key in this as well. Look at your driver profiles, the products and services that are available, and define the options that are available for the UK market. Now, this may allow you to then look at other countries as well, and then communicate the results. So take a planned approach, engage with your stakeholders, and really use your drivers as ambassadors in this. Once they have tried the technology and got used to it, they can then speak to your other drivers to explain what the real life usage cases looks like and really act as ambassadors for the project. And then just make it happen. Start with your pilot phase, as I said, get a pool of drivers on board and adjust as you go, because we all learn as we go. And then the wider adoption can happen. So we really hope that this has given you a good insight into some ideas on what you need to be looking at. It is quite a detailed subject and not time today to discuss things in too much detail. However, I'm sure Sue and myself, I know myself, will be happy to take any questions that you have. And if we can't cover it today, please email us and we'll be more than happy to come back to you. Back to you, Sue.
Yes, it's a huge thank you from both Madeline and myself for you listening to us today. We just want to say that we hope that you have a fantastic conference and you enjoy the rest of it. And just to say that to echo Madeline's comments is that we've just offered some insight into the electric vehicle adoption arrangement that is available in the UK market, and we thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Sue Branston and Madeleine Webster, for this interesting presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, don't hesitate to watch the other regional and country deep dives available for you in this section.